Andrew, what was it like growing up for you?
Growing up, I lived in the country. We had animals. We had a lot of acres of land, and I worked. I worked a lot on the farm, and but I had a great childhood. We lived near water, so in the summers I spent a lot of time in the water, and yeah, loved my experience of growing up, sort of in rural America.
Wow, wow. Amazing. Thank you for that. And how
Mhm.
did those earlier experience prepare you for what you do today? Yeah.
It's a great question. Uh, I think the most prevalent one is the value of hard work. Like I didn't really have an option not to work growing up. I was never lazy. Summer break, I had friends that lived in town, and they would say, "Oh, we're so bored," and I didn't have that option. I was rarely bored because I continually had to show up, whether it was the weekday, the weekend, and I think that shaped a lot of my personality when it comes to entrepreneurship. That, along with when I bought my restaurant, that really took that and shook it up and took it to a whole new level.
What was this your earlier job you actually did before you bought your restaurant?
I did a number of jobs. I worked retail. I did some trades. I installed carpet. I did tree removal. But the job that really got me interested in entrepreneurship and and owning a business was when I actually bought a window cleaning business off a fellow student when I was at college. So it was my sophomore year, and I had a friend, and he was graduating, and he was moving to Germany to play basketball, and he had this little window cleaning business, and I thought it would be really a good opportunity to buy it from him and see what I could do with it. So I spent 3 years in college really owning this window cleaning business, which is a fantastic business to own. So it really was my first entrepreneurial endeavor. I did some teaching of computer classes to, I think, young kids back in junior high or high school. But it was the first one that really provided income for me, gave me I had employees that I had to manage. I had to do marketing, I had to do sales, I had to do customer service, like all the things wrapped up in this little window cleaning business that I ran just in the when I wasn't in class. So, May through September, maybe into October a little bit. So it was really a 6 month seasonal business, but that was really the serious start to my entrepreneurial journey, and realizing I think there was one day where I didn't have to work that day, but I had three employees at the time, and they had two jobs on the docket, but they did a third job because they had the time and they could do it. And it was amazing because I had this day off, middle of the day, like a Tuesday or Wednesday, middle of the week, and I had employees that enjoyed what they were doing. I paid them well, and I started to see the scalable impact of employees and what that can do for a business. That's a lot of small trades based businesses can be solopreneur endeavors with maybe a helper or two helpers, but when you can find people that actually take initiative and show up and really push it, uh, they can they can multiply your efforts. And I think that day, that moment, was really when I realized the power of entrepreneurship.
Wow, that was really amazing. Was there any earlier experience at all that actually sparked that yeah, that idea that you want to go to be an entrepreneur despite you don't know yet? Or was it this particular business that actually shaped you for it?
I didn't grow up wanting to be an entrepreneur. I actually went to school to be a math teacher, and or no, I wanted to go to school to be a math teacher. My senior year of high school, I was like, nope, I'm gonna go into computers. So I went into computer information systems and thought I was gonna go into business and run computer networks or do something with computers. But it was that moment when I was like, nope, entrepreneurship. This is really I don't know if I caught the bug or what it was, but that took my childhood of really not being exposed to it very much. My dad was in the trades, and my mom worked at a hospital, so it was nothing. I didn't have family and friends that own businesses for the most part. Um, my mom owned a small side hustle for many years, but I didn't have a ton of exposure to it. So really, that was the turning point that said, let's continue down this path as far as as far as it'll go.
Wow, wow, amazing. How do you actually figure out your way around working with people and building on team when you actually take up the business?
I think because everyone I hired, they were a personal friends, fellow college students, and it was a seasonal thing. It was they needed a summer job. I had a summer job. I paid decent. It worked out. So I think there was a unique advantage maybe at that stage of life because no one was looking for their next career. It was, hey, we can
Hmm.
work with some friends and this is what we're going to do this summer and it'll be a good time and we'll get paid and make money and have a good time. So I think looking back, and they were honestly they were really good guys. They were a good group of guys that worked hard. I didn't have to manage them a whole lot. We had the jobs, they knew what they got paid, and it was pretty simple. But there weren't other opportunities that they were trying to go after. It was just a 4-ish month gig for them, and so it worked. Uh, that changed a lot when I bought my next business because that was more lifelong employees or
Yeah.
longer term career minded individuals. But I sort of got lucky on the first real business I owned because we were just a bunch of college guys having a good time for the most part.
Wow, wow, amazing. So, later down during your career, when you actually bought your first business, which was in your 20s, how were you able now to be able to kind of deal with employees, deal with the team? How were you able to work perfectly with them and achieving the same goal?
I owned a restaurant for 14 years, and that's where I got really uh, most of my experience of managing people. And honestly, for many of those years, I did a pretty poor job at it. I've hired and trained hundreds of employees. When I sold the business, we had 25 employees that I hired or that I employed. But later on down, after making a ton of mistakes and really almost getting my MBA in business ownership by owning these multiple businesses, a couple
Yeah.
things sort of rose to the surface, and one of them was clarifying expectations. I think there are so many employees that have a very loose understanding of what's expected of them, both from a responsibility standpoint. What does success look like? What does good performance look like? I have one past client and he was frustrated by one of his employees because my client would get to work at 9 but they started at 7, and he was expecting this employee to manage the other team members from 7 to 9 when my client wasn't there, but it was never communicated. And so this lack of clear expectations created frustration for the owner because he thought his employee wasn't doing his job, and frustration for the employee because he wasn't aware that it was his job to manage them for those 2 hours. So I think really clarifying expectations, whether you have just one or two employees, because I mean, if you have three employees, if if one employee isn't really clear, that's a third of your workforce. And a lot of small business owners think, oh, I only have a couple of employees, I don't have to worry about these issues. But that's when it's almost critical because every employee you take on or lose, that's a massive percentage of your overall staff, and B, you're setting the foundation and the trajectory for when you have 5 or 10 or 15 or 20 employees. So clarifying expectations, that's something I learned at the restaurant that I owned, of really,
Wow.
what is my role here? What does success look like? Another opportunity for business owners is acknowledging their employees, and this is probably where I failed the most. Is I rarely caught them doing good. I expected them to perform at a high level all the time, but the moment they slipped up, I was the first one to bring that to their attention. And I think if I could go back, I would acknowledge the good work they did a lot more and really build up their, I call it an acknowledgement tank, where if you are praised and acknowledged for a period of time, then if something happens where you need to have a more of a challenging conversation for a performance issue or something they did, those conversations can be a lot easier because you've been catching them doing all the good that they're doing for the last weeks or months, that now you can bring up a challenging issue, and it's easier to have that conversation. So acknowledging employees when they're showing up, acknowledging their attitudes and behaviors is a huge opportunity. One that sadly I didn't really learn till it was almost too late. One of the biggest lessons for me was around rewarding results. So there were many years that I didn't do bonuses. I didn't do anything performance based. Maybe there was something around the holidays, Christmas bonus or something. But for the most part, it was you're here, you get your paycheck, and we're moving on. When I started looking both at the front of the house and the back of the house, so the servers and the cook staff, and started giving them weekly bonuses based on very simple metrics. For the back of the house, it was ticket times. If they could keep their ticket times under a certain number of minutes, they got a bonus at the end of the weekend. And for the staff, it was table turns. And once I started rewarding the results, so many things shifted. Our ticket times drastically improved simply because we had a target we were shooting for, and there was a piece of the action if we achieve that target. And so that is something I do a lot with my clients currently, is really getting clear on what that can look like, because I'm not saying money or increasing pay or incentives will solve all the problems, but they can they can fill a big hole in that relationship between employee and employer. And I think one other thing I learned really at the restaurant related to that is empowering your team with information. So there was about a couple of years before I sold the business, we got these digital tablets to do ordering. And so we had all this data. We could look at what menu items sold, how long were ticket times, average guest check. And by showing all my employees that data, they could then start to see what the impact of their efforts. So I was rewarding their results that they got, but I was also showing them the relevant data. So if it's a trade business, it could be, how close we are to on target for hours worked, or material cost, or anything that's measurable. When you start giving your employees a little bit of information, they now have the same information you have, and they can feel the weight of wasting product or wasting time because you have to leave the job site and go get more materials because you didn't plan properly. And once they do that, they can take more of a ownership role, and not not so much just a hands off, just tell me what to do. Like, they can show up, they can care about the business a little bit more because they have a more vested take in it.
Wow,
That was
wow, this
that was
is
a long
amazing.
answer.
Yeah, it's I actually enjoy all the answers you gave because it was very, very robust. It's more like a blueprint on how to handle your team and get the most out of them. I think it was the fact that you make reference of you building an expectation of what every role demand and what you demand from the team. Because sometimes I feel when it comes to trade business, a whole lot of everything rise and fall on communication. And sometimes trade persons who actually run business, they actually miss out in the aspect of communication. And once you don't get communication right, your team and the business is not going to be on the same page.
Hmm.
And when you actually make reference of you make reference of in respect of rewarding, yeah, the team too when they actually more like do so well. And it just struck me that I remember when I was it, I think I volunteered for a particular business then, and I remember what actually more like kept me doing that very job for a very long time was the fact that I was always rewarded when I do something right. And it was easier for them to reprimand me and scold me when I did something wrong, being that they have rewarded me when things was going right or when I was doing things right. So those hard conversations that come after on when I fall more like I didn't meet up to the standard. It was easier to deal with, being that I know that my effort is being recognized at every point, and those feedback actually help me to actually more like serve as a cushion between those hard talk and being able to still recognize the fact that yeah, I'm learning a whole lot from this business, and the fact that I know much about it, being that they are training me and also they are recognizing my efforts owing to those feedback. And I think that is very, very key when it comes to running a business that demands people, that demand teams, and you need every of more like in terms of their energy and everything. So I think rewarding them is very, very key to get best of them.
Hmm. Absolutely.
Yeah, yeah. Thank
I
you.
think so many business owners, they think an annual bonus, a profit sharing is adequate, and I look at it, the shorter time frame we can reward our employees. It's like your kid, if they get A on their report card from school, and 6 months later you go out for ice cream, sort of lost its impact. And so
Yeah,
if we can tie uh, rewarding results closer to the actual activity, it psychologically it aligns better with the employees, with the way humans think. So that's why when I think of business owner, they say, we do an annual bonus, and then I say, well, what's it based on? It's oftentimes just based on gut feeling. Maybe it's based on profits, but it's not going to drive the business forward. It's not going
yeah,
to change behavior. It's going to be a nice thing, but it could backfire because sometimes if this year an employee got X amount and next year maybe the business did better, but for whatever reason, cash flow or financially the business is a little bit worse off, they get a lesser amount the next year, even though the business did better. Now they're frustrated. Now you took something, a gift, a bonus, but because there was no clarity around it, what it takes to get it, how much it'll be, now you're actually frustrating your employees when you're giving them a bonus instead of motivating them, encouraging them, and thanking them. And so poorly designed incentive plans can really actually backfire, and which is a shame because now it's costing you both the money and the emotional capital with the employees. So getting it right can work really good. Getting it wrong can have sadly long-term negative effects.
yeah. Thank you so much. I think that's really, really important. Getting it right is going to do a whole lot of good compared to getting it wrong. And also, I was most fascinated when I was reading your bio. I discovered that you bought your business or the restaurant business in your 20s. And I know the demand that is in restaurants and especially food business, being that there's a whole lot of investment from the head start, and at the end of it, it's very, very risky. And I was curious. I was like, what actually motivates you to actually more like get into the restaurant business? And yeah, because it's demanding and it's a hell. How will I make reference of it? It's a whole lot of work from the head start and a whole lot of investments. How will I say this? There's this particular mentor of mine that actually make reference of business like restaurants as a Jacob business, being that you have a lot of investment in line, and at the end of it, it's very, very demanding to actually more like get result out of. So, what was the motivation before starting out?
uh, Necessity, maybe. So it was, I had just graduated college and I was washing windows. I actually, mistake number one, I did an internship at a church and I was intern in their IT department at my spring of my senior year. And I was offered a full-time position, head of IT of a fairly large church. And I passed it up. I was like, nope, I really enjoy the entrepreneurial journey. I own a window cleaning business. Like, I'm going to keep going down this path. And so I passed on a full-time job. So summer went. I had a great time running the window cleaning, had a couple employees. Fall came, and my girlfriend at the time, she's like, so you're not, you're done with school and you don't do window cleaning year round. So come October, November, what are you going to do? And I was like, oh yeah, I should probably figure that out. So I started looking in this was 2004. So I started looking in the newspaper
Yeah.
and saw some job openings. So I went some interviews and none of them were a good fit. And I saw a restaurant for sale. And I was like, I like owning a business and I like cooking food. So it seems like owning a restaurant would be a no-brainer. And I only had 2 months experience working at a local restaurant as a server. So I did not have a depth of experience that one should probably have before buying a restaurant. But it was this feeling of I need to do something, and I wasn't finding the right job. And I passed on that job that I had for my internship. So I guess I need to buy a restaurant. And so I was able to get the required funds and did some research. And I'm not gonna lie, I didn't do the best research. I think whatever it would have said, the research would have revealed, I would have purchased anyways. I was 23 and felt desperate for something. So it wasn't out of desire like I want to create an amazing experience. I've always wanted to own a restaurant. It was really like, well, I like cooking and and I like owning a business, so I'm gonna marry the two. And anytime someone says they want to start or own a restaurant, I try to at least give them a certain level of pause and caution because it is a very challenging business to own. You're a
Yeah.
manufacturing company. You take a raw product into a finished good. You work with a customer base that won't tell you if you're doing a good job. They just won't show up anymore, and they'll tell their friends don't go back. It's super finicky, and it's a really challenging business to own. So I was motivated by desperation. Do I regret it? Absolutely not. It's part of my story. I owned it for 14 years. There was about a good decade in there that I was pretty miserable. I was very unhappy owning the business. I hated the industry. I hated my location because it was like you said, it's a lot of hard work. I'm working too hard. And I had years that I didn't even break even. I lost money. 2 years back to back, I lost money working 7 days a week. And that was emotionally extremely challenging. But I was all in. I didn't want to go bankrupt, and I knew I had to figure it out. So through trial and error, I was able to turn it back around. I got married, and my wife, who has her master's in psychology, she put that track on hold, and she came around the restaurant with me for 5 years until she got pregnant, which I then immediately fired her. And and so we really experienced that as a married couple, as a newlyweds owning this restaurant, and that had a ton of challenges as well because, uh, being married to a business owner as she was, uh, yeah, there were some unique challenges. There's no predictability, both in income, in time. We had no freedom of time. We were married to the place. We had just gotten married, and we were married to the business as well, because it was a 7 day week operation, and I didn't have the staff to walk away for too long. We went on our honeymoon and came back, and I'm surprised the place hadn't burned down when we got back. But a lot of lessons learned, a lot of lessons that it's really hard to learn them from a textbook. So no regrets. The last couple years I owned it, we made some really good strategic decisions, and we started to grow like crazy. And we were growing at, I think, 8 times the industry average when I sold the business, and we were 4 times as profitable because we made some specific decisions that really caused it to be a destination location and one that was run very profitably.
Wow. This is really amazing and really fascinating too because it's yeah. I think another thing I'm mostly interested about is for good 14 years you're able to run this, and you make reference of in between the years. For the first 2 3 years, you run at lost while actually running the business, and that just jerked me at the side. I was like, wow, how did Andrew was able to stay through this period of ups and downs without giving up and just go and look for normal job? Because I'm like, 14 years is a whole lot, and from your description now, it just shows that it was quite a whole lot of hard work, more like doing the job, and being that, yeah, restaurant business take a whole lot, being that most times you do the more like the production. At the end of the day, there's a time span before uh yeah, there's an expiring date between you making the food and the time it's going to get bad, and you're now waiting on client and delivering. So I'm a bit curious, more like what actually keep you during this period of time till it become profitable enough that despite the level of hard work you're actually putting in, more like what was the single thing that actually more like kept you going?
I think it was feeling I didn't have any other option. I think because I had financed the purchase of the business, I knew if I didn't follow through on my payments, then I'd probably go bankrupt, and I definitely didn't want to do that. And so it going all in forced me to figure it out. I sort of burnt the ships. Where if you burn the ships, if there's no plan B, you're forced to figure it out. I think a lot of challenges that business owners face is by deciding between two or more options, and that can really slow progress. You know, if we have option A, option B, option C. Let's say we're going to try to grow three businesses or three divisions or sell three products, and we try A, and it's not going well. So yeah, let's go to B. B, oh, A was hard because of this, but B doesn't have that issue. So we're going to focus on B. And you're chugging along, and then you hit some resistance. B, not a good product market fit or something. So, oh, look at C, great product market fit. So you go to C, and then you do that for a little bit. It's like, just more resistance. You know what? Life was pretty good when I was trying to do A. So let's go back to A, and we go back and forth because when we hit resistance, we think, well, there's got to be a better way. And this is across the board, whether it's which marketing you should do. Should you do Facebook ads? Should you do organic posts? Should you do mailers, flyers, cold calling? Like any of those options will work for most businesses. But it's the pushing through the resistance that when there are alternatives, you don't have to. When you don't have an option, when I didn't have the option to sell the business because it was losing money or close it down because I had a note on it, I had to figure it out. And I think that's one thing that really makes entrepreneurs maybe tick and more unique than non-entrepreneurs is their ability to creatively figure it out. I mean, we're born or we're trained to be creative problem solvers, but it's really easy just to jump ship. And if you don't have any ships to jump and you just have to figure it out, you're going to get pretty creative figured out. And I think that was really the singular reason why I was able to be successful, because I didn't have an option. When you have options, then you don't push through those hard days, hard weeks, hard nights, or hard months. You move on, and when you can't move on, you just got to figure it out. So I think that was probably the the biggest reason that kept me motivated.
Wow, this is really really amazing, like, and the fact that you make reference of the that you didn't have any other options. That was what actually one like that actually spots creativity and spots different ways you could actually more like do this different so that you could make that same thing work rather than giving it up. Yeah, which is really really amazing. And while you were just sharing your experience of that, I was just wondering, and I actually want to ask, do you think that is the reason why a whole lot of entrepreneurs, trade persons who get to start their business, let's see, to some level, some percent of them actually more like some business get bankrupt or at the end of the day get closed down? Is it because they really have options? Because it just makes me start thinking that actually, if you have options, it's easier to just dump an existing business and just go along with the other business and not put in necessary energy which is being needed, because over time reading history I've got to find out that a whole lot of business would do so very well. It was because more like they hit their rock bottom and they were able to kind of stay true. And after that particular experience, they were now able to kind of figure out what they could do right to actually more like maximize that particular thing, other than the fact that they have more like an alternative. And once they hit the rock bottom, the next thing is to kind of jump on that opportunity and leave all the whole idea and all the plans. So more like, what do you think? What is the common trait you think what make business fail, irrespective of our trade business and those who are not in trades? More like, what would you say the singular thing that actually more like make a whole lot of persons who are entrepreneur who actually started out with the right mindset to actually build that particular business, but at the end of the way they couldn't be able to kind of survive, or they couldn't actually more like scale the business, or they could actually stay true before actually more like uh shutting down? What do you think is the particular single trait? And
In the trades, I would say, and similar for most small businesses, is over dependence on the owner. Uh, when you have to show up every day, you don't have anyone to rely on. If you don't show up, you don't get paid. Uh, it's hard. It's hard to show up every day. And I think when everything flows through you, you're doing the marketing, the sales, you're doing the shopping, the product delivery, the planning, the sketching, the customer service, the admin, all of it. It's hard to keep going. And I think if you can enroll people, enroll others to support your vision, to help you build this company, uh, you're less likely to fail. Uh, but when it all rests on your shoulders, A, it's easier to fail because you don't have, yes, you have your responsibilities, but you're not responsible
Yeah.
for 5, 10 other people, their families, their livelihood. So it is easier to walk away when there's no people. So that is maybe a benefit, I guess. But to build a truly successful, sustaining business, the people thing is really, for 99% of the businesses, that is the linchpin. If you can figure it out and do it right, you can build a business that's not dependent on you, that can be a huge blessing to you and your family, your employees and their families, your customers, the community, and you can build that can be saleable someday because it's not dependent on you. I mean, the biggest reason businesses don't sell is because the business is overly dependent on the owner, and no one wants to buy a business that they're just taking over their job. So I think if business owners, small business owners, especially in the trades, spent just at start just an hour a week on the business, strategically planning, not just doing the business work, but actually thinking, okay, how can I take this thing, whether it's called my last name construction or whatever it is, how can I think of it as its own living, breathing entity? Like it's not me. There's me, the owner. I'm the current owner, but this is its own living, breathing organism that needs to be nurtured and needs to grow, and maybe might grow bigger than me, and maybe I'll pass it off through a sale or acquisition, or handing it down to a family member, to someone else. So I think it's a mindset shift of this thing is different than me, and I need to to start a small portion, and ideally it gets bigger and bigger, that portion of time every week, on nurturing it and building it and creating it. And doing that consistently will increase the value and the viability of this thing, and decrease its dependency on you as the owner.
Wow. Amazing, amazing, amazing. I think that was really, really profound. So the fact that you make reference, I think it just speaks volume to the fact that especially trade business depends on people. It rise and fall on people, and building a structure which actually speak volume to the fact that you are not only the key person who actually more like influence every and every details that is going on currently in the business. Just speak volume to the fact, because if you are the only one who is just running it, it's easier to just dump it. It's easier to just let go, and it's easier to more like the day you are not available is as though the business is already shut down. It's not currently running again. So having more like people in various roles. In fact, I think that is a bit more like another thing too that can actually keep it going. Being that you have a level of staff that you are feeding, you are paying, and that could actually more like even spoil this particular energy that I need to get serious about this because I have a whole lot of things that I'm responsible for that I'm going to pay. So that actually more like strike a whole lot of things other than you just being the only singular person getting to run the business. So Andrew, more like let's say if I know you have run a couple of business and you work with business owner, scale holder of business, and yeah, you are currently working with a whole lot of business. if you are to be in your 20s again, let's say as at that particular point where you get to kind of open, buy your restaurants and actually more like started out. If you were to more like kind of list more like a blueprint you should follow more like in terms of doing a scale business, let's say a trade business and hands-on business, maybe more like putting restaurants as part of the deal, more like when you are just starting out, what would be the blueprints you could give more like you can give your younger self towards more like starting out in a way that you can actually build structures and you won't get burnout and still you're able to kind of work a whole lot of things. If you're to give more like a blueprint to your younger self, what will it be like?
Yeah. I think I would start with, what problem are you solving? Whether it's food space or the trades or any other business, business exists to solve problem. In the
Yeah,
restaurants, it's someone's hungry. In the
yeah,
trades, it's I have a leaky toilet, I need a house built, whatever it is. So many people start with, I can do X. People say I'm good at X. I should sell X as a service, which is a viable path. But I think the opportunity that a lot of small business owners miss is, what how are you different than others? How do you solve the problem a little differently that your ideal customers may appreciate? So everyone does it this way. This is industry standard. But I see a way that I can maybe do it a little differently, and I might enjoy it more, I may be more profitable, more efficient, and my customers, they'll get this added benefit that they didn't even realize, or they get an added benefit that they really wanted and didn't think they could get. So I would look in the marketplace and say, who has a, who has problems that need solving. And as far as a blueprint, I would just start by talking to people. If you could spend 3 months and talk to 100 to 200 people, if it's sort of like, I bought a restaurant. I had no business buying a restaurant. So take someone like me in my 20s. Let's say, okay, you want to start a business? Find 200 people to interview, 20 minutes on Zoom in person, and do a variety of industries and characteristics and stuff, and just listen to what people say. Listen to, stay-at-home moms and factory workers and uh, business owners of all different stripes, and see what is missing in their life. What problem do they have that they've tried to figure out but haven't been able to solve yet? I think if we started with the problem, I think a lot of business owners would have a lot more clarity on how they add value. Because I think when it's just like, oh, I know how to do this, and now I'm going to go in the marketplace and tell people that I do this, you don't know if it's what people want. Now, obviously, many businesses, I mean, we need plumbers and electricians and general contractors and restaurants, but there's so much commoditization. You really can't, for the most part, most electricians are very similar to the others. And so when everyone's the same, it's a commodity. And when it's a commodity, people buy on price.
yeah,
So if you're going to not sell on price
yeah.
and
So true.
not try to think the only way you can win is by being the lowest price, well, then you have to differentiate and figure out what's going to cause me to stand out differently. So when the homeowner gets to the kitchen table and takes the three bids they got, instead of just going to the bottom right hand corner and looking at what's the cheapest dollar value for each of the bid, their mind stands out because the sales conversation I had with them, the value proposition, how I present my offer, how I show up. I mean, there's 100 different ways you can differentiate yourself even before the sale, or especially before the sale, that will cause someone to be willing to choose you even if you're not cheaper. So I would look for two things. I would look for what problems exist in the marketplace, and obviously, if you have an interest in one, that's even better. Some business owners, they don't care what they own. they love business. They love the idea of business. So it doesn't matter if they're in the health space, the construction space, the technology space. Like they just want to build the business. But if it's something you enjoy, I think that's a bonus. And then second of all, what's going to make you different than the competition? How will you solve this problem in a unique way? Or what is that one thing that you can do, whether it's how you go to market, how you deliver your service, how you bill, how you do any of these dozens of things? Is there one thing that your ideal customers care a lot about that they currently aren't getting that you can do? And uh, I think that's a way you can really grow the business. Because when I owned my restaurant, we were a family diner, breakfast and lunch, and at one point I made this shift where we got rid of all of our artificial colors and flavors. So I'd go through 300 and some different line items in my ordering and remove anything that had red, yellow, caramel color, this laundry list of artificial colors and flavors, so that I could say, if you eat at my restaurant, there's no food that's going to have artificial colors and flavors. Then we moved on to focusing on allergy friendly ingredients. So we had a lot of dairy free items, we had a lot of vegan items, we had a lot of soy free items, we had a lot of gluten free items. And so we saw this opportunity in the marketplace, and making those changes just caused our business, our restaurant, to hockey stick, where we were just growing a little bit, and then suddenly we started growing a lot because we were offering something that was different. We could charge a little bit more because they couldn't get these items at home or easily or from another place, and that was really made all the difference. So when you're starting out, figure out what problem you're going to solve. Once you do that, figure out how you're going to solve it in a unique way that's going to resonate more with your customers.
Yeah, thank you so much, Andrew. I think that really speaks volume. I think at the point where you just make reference of uh where you said more like a whole lot of business who are doing the same thing is more like a commodity, and our customer actually more like shop the cheapest among them. So I think it's speaks volume where you make and where you said more like do your survey to actually more like know the problem you're solving, and yeah, hang it on a particular unique selling point where uh, looking at the market, you discover that, yeah, this market is not as more like I was solving this particular problem in this particular niche specifically. I think that actually more like help a whole lot as an entrepreneur or as a trade person who are actually heading a business, that you look out for those particular gap, those creek, and yeah, peg hook more like everything it does on it. I think it make it profitable compared to just running around doing similar thing that everybody does, which is quite overwhelming, and a lot of times you don't get a kind of being able to get in terms of revenue and profitability. It's demand to actually more like build a better business and being able to kind of create a better offer. Yeah, thank you so much, Andrew. So Andrew,
Mm-hmm.
and I know over time you have working with a whole lot of small business and to build structures and to build a whole lot of stuff. So what is the biggest more like challenge you see a whole lot of them have each time you're working with them, and how were you able to kind of solve their problem? Especially the reason I'm asking this is especially for those my audience who have similar problem and who would love to reach out to you to solve their problem. Can you just give an idea of what problem you have been seeing or various business you have been kind of handling, the problem they have been having, and how were you able to kind of remember normal like a little blueprint of how we able to kind of solve their problem?
Mm-hmm. One of the biggest challenges, maybe the biggest, in 2025 currently is staffing. Finding employees, keeping employees, retaining employees, motivating employees, managing employees. Most business owners, they are experts at what they do. They have bachelors, they have masters, they have doctorates, they have certifications and designations on the thing that they do. The challenge comes when they need to lead, manage, and hire others to do that thing that they do, but yet it's their name or their business name on the product. So they can do the thing, they do a really good job at it. Now you reach a ceiling where it's like, I can't keep doing the thing. I need to hire other people to help me do the thing. Well, now you hire them, and they're going to do the thing, and you're going to trust that they're going to do it to your level, and your name's going to be on the product. And so the challenge is a lot of employees just don't care. They really, there's a sense of apathy in our culture of employees not really caring. There's a lack of loyalty. We're not living 40 years ago where, an employee would stick with a company for 30 or 40 years. That's no longer as prevalent. It is in some industries and in some businesses, but for the most part, that's rare. Your employees are shifting, every few years, every 5 years or 10 years, because there's opportunity. So creating a culture where the employees care about the business as if it was their own. And that can, I touched on those a few things earlier of clarifying expectations,
Yeah.
acknowledging behaviors, rewarding results, and empowering your employees. If you can do those four items, you can really build a culture where employees feel vested. They maybe there's an opportunity to make a little bit more at a competing company, but they they feel like a sense of ownership at your business. They care about the business. They want to see it grow. If it does grow, they get a benefit to its growth. It's not just, business ownership is tough. And I think a lot of employees think, oh, it's so easy. But the average employee, the average business makes, I don't know, like 8% profit margin. The average employee thinks that profit margin is in the 30 percentile. So the average employee thinks the business owner is making four times what they're actually making. And that can be frustrating both for the business owner, because like it
Yeah.
takes a lot of work to make a buck, and to the employees, they're like, why should I keep showing up every day? They're making bank. I'm either going to do it myself, or if I can get a better opportunity or make more money, I'm going to go somewhere else. So if you put systems in place to where you give yourself the best possible chance for your employees to truly care about the business, and it starts though as the employer, who they're being. Do they care about the employees? Like I've talked to some people that they don't. They just want them to show up, do their job, get the paycheck, and leave. It's gonna be hard to really motivate them or engage with them if that's who you're being as a business owner. So if you're being where you truly care about them, you care about who they are as a person, as a member of the community, uh, about their family, like there is a vested interest in them and not just the appearance. That's one thing I don't like about AI is everything we're trying to appear uh, like it's a personal invite, or we're trying to appear that we know what we're talking about because we use AI to type our articles instead of doing it by person. Like there's all this appearance stuff, and it's going to fall flat if you are trying to appear to care about your employees, that you're putting on a show, or that you're going to offer benefits, but they're just going to be the bare minimum benefits, just so you have the appearance of a solid benefit package. The first thing you got to do is actually care about your employees. Once you care about your employees, then you can put some systems in place that will, yes, build up their acknowledgement tank, and really clarify exactly how they add value to the company, how they can show up and really play a massive role. Because most people are going to work somewhere, and why not work somewhere where you know what your roles are, you know what your responsibility, you know what success looks like, and then you're rewarded when that success happens. And you get some of that information, that behind the scenes, that, oh, this is how the business works. These are typical profit margins, or this is how long a sale takes, or any relevant information that when they're sitting there doing their job, they're not just working in a vacuum. They're not like, I just got, A to B over and over. No, they're thinking like, wait a minute though, if part of the success of this business is shortening the sales cycle from, let's say, 6 weeks to 4 weeks. If we can shorten that, then we can increase our revenue by 50% because we're compressing time. and I have domain, I have autonomy over this area. I got an idea. If we remove this friction point and help the sale go quicker through that process, we could go from 6 weeks to 5 weeks. It's not four, but it's improvement in an area that for some reason the business owner can't do or can't see. And so when you get employees caring about the business, is as if it was their own. You don't have to micromanage as much. You don't have to worry about decision making as much because you have vested partners in the growth of the business.
Wow. Wow. Amazing. Thank you, Andrew. I thank you so much. I think building acknowledgement tank is really, really key in terms of for you to actually support your employees to take initiative and yeah, do some certain level of tasks and even suggest some critical stuff being that being with the customer or owing to the level of work that they're doing, they are expert at it. They could actually offer more like a unique suggestion compared to you just being the owner who does just one singular part of the business. So it's very, very key. In fact, I was even looking forward to asking more like, you actually more like call company with benefit. How do you actually build it? But the fact that you already make reference of a whole lot of intriguing stuff, I don't even know what to make reference. So more like if I actually want to make this a bit more like how will I say it now? Uh, let's say now they are very, very key when it comes to company with benefits. So why do you actually believe that it's important for more like a business to benefit not just more like not just the owner alone, but that's of the employees, the customer, and the community at large. And I actually want to kind of give your suggestion and this so that our three persons who are at the end of the day listening, they will get to see a big picture of how business is supposed to run and what they could do different with their business.
I think I feel the I feel business has a huge impact on culture. I think that the biggest impact on culture is our relationship with our creator. But I think the second biggest impact on culture is business. And businesses exist, yes, to make money, to solve problems. But when you can shift your lens a little bit and think, okay, what can I do to benefit me as the owner, my family, and those I care about with this asset? But at the same time, holding this idea of, but how can this business be a massive benefit to my employees? And that can look like, obviously, there's the baseline of paying them well, treating them well, benefits if possible. But they're going to spend half their waking hours, maybe a little less than half their waking hours working in your business. How can you use this asset, this tool, to be truly a blessing to them? Is there is there a bucket list item that they want to achieve and can't on their own that you can help them with inside the business? Can you create an environment, a culture that really lifts them up where the work-life balance is a common phrase, frustration, and most people think of it as time. Like, 40 hours, but 45 hours, now we're getting out of whack on our work-life balance. But I don't think it really has much to do with time. I think it's energy. You could work 60 hours at a job and go home and have tons of energy to be with your family, friends, social activities, stuff like that. You could work 20 hours a week at a job and go home completely depleted from any energy. So I don't think work-life balance is about time. I think it's about how much energy you have after work. And so when you look at your business as a tool to bless others, to bless your employees, you're not thinking just how can the business grow or how can I be better off, but you're actually looking at them individually, especially in small business where you can't, if you have 20,000 employees, it's hard to do that. But when you have 10 employees or 5 employees or 15 employees, you can look and say, how can this business benefit them, that person and that person and that person? And when they're thinking, either when a recruiter calls them or they see a hiring sign or any other reason for them to think, I wonder if I should explore the marketplace, they're going to think, no, but this place is so vested in me and it's been such a blessing and a benefit to me. Why would I ever want to leave? Because if you can keep employees and keep them high performing, many problems go by the wayside. Benefiting your customers. I mean, that's the whole thing in business is how do you solve a problem for someone? So how do you do it in a way that truly benefits them, that lifts them up, that makes them feel good, that um, provides the best possible outcome? And that may involve charging more. Everyone thinks everyone's super, price sensitive, but it's not the case. If you can, sometimes you can charge more, but give them a better experience, better end product, or better follow up or something where they desire those things, better communication. They desire those things more than the cheapest price. So if you can see how does my business truly benefit my customers, my clients, and lastly, how can we show up differently in our community, benefit society at large? Like if you do the first three right, if your business is a blessing to you and your family, to your employees and their families, and to your customers and their challenges, then you're going to have a net impact, positive impact on the community. Yes, there are options. You can sponsor a little league team. You can donate to charity. You can create a charitable arm or something, and those are all fine. But I think just showing up with the lens of this is an asset that can be really a blessing to all these different stakeholders, uh, that will have a massive net gain in the community. So that's how I view business is really how can people be better off after than they were before, regardless if it's ownership and management, whether it's employees or customers and the society at large. I think it's a powerful lens to view business through, not just uh, profit maximization.
This is really, really amazing. Yeah, it speaks volume to actually more like bettering our communities and making things right. Because if you as more like a business owner, actually build this particular system that make your employees happy, they will end up going or being a happy family, and at the end of the day, make it a happy society, being that they are not burnt out, they enjoy what they are doing, and they are eager to show up every now and then. I think just this mindset of just more like thinking business more like as a big picture in terms of the customer, the employees, and the community at large is a very robust way and a very balanced way of doing business right. Not just for this sole of more like profit making, without actually more like considering the people who work inside that particular company. Because I think today I was listening to more like a biography, and the author was actually speaking volume to the fact that business that it was making reference of, I think he was running the business owing to with the structure that if the company is any more, he actually more like increase the share of what the employees get over time, and he was like, yes, it's better I just increase more like what they are earning over time, other than at the end of the day pay them less, and at the end of the day build something for the community. Whereas the employees who are doing it, they are left with nothing. So so it's very, very key getting to balance each of these particular end, which speak volume to, yeah, doing business right. So Andrew, more like how can people actually do business with you, and okay, how can my audience actually more like do business with you, and how can they get to connect more with you before we come to the
Mhm.
end of the show?
Well, you can visit my website at builttobenefit.com, or if you want to schedule a call with me, it's huddlewithandrew.com. And we can spend a few minutes online and just see what are those challenges? What are those employee challenges? What are those uh, commoditized, differentiating challenges where you feel like how will rise above in a marketplace that feels all the same? If there's other financial challenges, cash flow challenges that you want a different perspective and see, you know, uh, cash flow is one of those silent killers that if you don't really manage it well, it will sink your business. So any challenge your business faces, uh, a great opportunity is to get on my calendar. We can explore them, and then we can discuss what that looks like to actually permanently solve those challenges. So either go to builtbenefit.com or huddlewithandrew.com to get on my calendar.
All right. Thank you so much, Andrew. It has really been more like a lovely time. I think not just for my business, not just for my audience alone, for personally for me, being that I learned a whole lot in terms about doing business, right? Not just the sole aim of just making a profit. And it has really been an amazing moment having these particular meetings with you. So,
Arrow, it's been a pleasure.
Andrew, this has been an amazing conversation packed with wisdom. Thank you for sharing your stories and these powerful lessons. For those listening who want to learn more about building business that doesn't burn you out, you can check out Andrew Free Tools, the Team Clarity Snapshot at teamclaritysnapshot.com. Thank you so much for being here, Andrew. And our listener, remember your stories is being built with every step you take. So keep building, and I'll see you in the next episode.